it's my belief that the majority of it is this creative use of money to do all sorts of unnameable things. And I think it's just a strategy of Marxism: lower all the shrines, kill the aspirations to greatness. The only way to opt out of that is to build a network locally with other people that you can transact with using Bitcoin. It was very inspiring to me for my dreams of Alberta. Whichever place on earth puts those three things into action first, the intelligence of the entire world is going to move there. The city of Calgary would become like a Dubai.
Your world has been stripped of beauty and inspiration. What if Bitcoin could shatter Fiat's chokehold on art and reignite a rebellion in Canada? Today, we're sitting down with Bitcoin artist MADEX. This isn't just about paint on a canvas. MADEX is here to expose how Fiat has turned art into a demoralizing, soulless scam. We're diving headfirst into the dark truth of how Fiat has degraded creativity. Think Sistine Chapel versus banana taped to a wall. How you must spend your Bitcoin, how the chains holding you back are all in your head, as well as his vision of a prosperous, independent Alberta that could be. This is a game-changing conversation. Politics is downstream of culture, and culture is downstream of art. Stick around, you can't afford to miss this one. Going beyond Bitcoin to bring you the skills and insights you need to escape the fiat matrix. This is Mentor Sessions. MADEX, thanks for joining us today. Your background, of course, looks beautiful. I would expect nothing else. Let's jump right into it. How has the fiat system degraded the quality and authenticity of art?
Well, I mean, the most obvious thing is cost savings. So with fiat, the long-term vision is stripped out of everything, and the goal is to get things completed as fast as possible, to sell them as quickly as possible so that you can get the cash in and then turned around and back out as fast as possible. So the artistic design layer across many projects has just been deleted because, as the soulless commie believes, that it is not necessary, and also the fiat incentives do not give a reason for it to be invested in, because if the structure being built or whatever it is that is being built is not going to exist in 20 years anyways, there's not really an incentive to make it inspiring or better. I think also a lot of it is like demoralizing. And lately I've been getting into all the fake history stuff, which has been very exciting. But the
fake history stuff, what's that?
Yeah, I wanted to know.
Well, it's clear that we don't know what the fuck is going on at all, and it's barely possible to verify truth from 10 years ago. So when you look at these stories of history going back, 100 years, 1,000 years, it is definitely not the way that it is presented. And I'm sure certain components are true, but it's impossible to really determine, what is real and what is not. And lately I've been looking at a lot of the architecture from the past and a lot of the claims around how it was created, like construction times and things like that. And I think there's just a lot of holes in the story. So I'm not really super prepared to talk about that publicly yet, because I'm just getting into it. The reason I'm getting into it is because it's a lot of fun. It's great to ask questions and explore things and question narratives, and I think that's a big part of Bitcoin. And I think that only certainty is the sign of idiocy when it comes to past stuff. So
it's a very interesting observation, because it feels like even just in modern history, I feel like we get a new declassification document every couple of years, where it's like, oh, that was just a lie. Like we can't distinguish necessarily what's historical record in some cases from what was just the marketing and propaganda of the time, and we don't know, right? We can't possibly know. I want to kind of touch on this idea with the state of fiat art as it currently is, because I'm not familiar at all necessarily with like the industry that you work in, you thrive in. Has art is the fiat art incentive centralizing as well too, or is that not something that's captured around it as well too? With this commoditization of art, has there also been a centralizing function as well?
Yeah, it's definitely like in the art world, it's a big club and you're not in it situation like it is in a lot of things. I mean, when I started, I believed that those, 40 million, 100 million, 10 million dollar sales were all real. And
Not
that,
money laundering?
yeah. And now I have come to learn that it's not. Art, art is a device now within the fiat world to move value around in ways that are beneficial, we'll say. And and it's just a giant kind of marketing machine, a huge scam, really, where on the outside they project it as if like, oh, these artists, they were, they worked very hard and they rose and they created really amazing stuff and they're really loved by the people and that's why they're in this position. But really a lot of them are just created by these sort of marketing engines that the marketing engine's incentive is to make it look like that, while they creatively move money around in the background. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's like fake authenticity.
Yeah. And I mean, like, this is my perspective on it is entirely from the outside looking in. It's only this year that I will be starting to work with galleries. So I think I'll become more connected on what's going on over the next few years as I actually kind of enter into at like the first rings of the business. But it's my understanding that people are willing to pay a lot of money for art. Certainly, I think $1 million sales are very, very possible, even up to 10 million. But when you're getting into the 25, 50, 100, there's got to be stuff. Maybe there's like some sheikhs that are buying these pieces because they just really like them and they have infinity money. But even then, it's my belief that the majority of it is this creative use of money in the fiat system to do all sorts of unnameable things.
Very interesting. I'm curious too on that same sort of note. It seems very apparent in from everything that you're describing as well that the fiat has had a direct effect on the art. But the other thing that I'm curious your insights on is that how do you see fiat's impact necessarily on people's ability to perceive art? Because not only has it had, again, I think there's some shenanigans and shit going on in the background, but it seems like people can't even assess what art is anymore.
Yeah, I think this is touched on in the Fountainhead a lot, and I think it's just a strategy of Marxism is to lower all the shrines and kill the aspirations to greatness within people. And we can, if the path is unclear on how to get to a successful level in whatever artistic discipline, it discourages the development of that. So somebody who is an amazing songwriter or an incredible singer, when they see a 16-year-old rocketed to turbo fame, and the narrative is never, they never say that, oh, this young artist was successful because we invested 300 million in marketing him internationally. They say like natural talent, rising star. Like the whole music business is extremely fake, and the art business in a lot of ways it works very similarly, with labels, record labels, and in the art world, the equivalent is galleries and art dealers. But if you're looking at a painting that is about to sell for $30 million and it's a bunch of paint just splattered on canvas that a child could have done, a person with incredible skill looking at that, it's demoralizing, and they can't see the connection of like, okay, well, I can do that, so why is it worth $30 million? And it's like, well, because you have to be in their club. And that's what makes it so. And it pushes people out. I think that creativity is very much tied to individualism. I think that the best creators are the most original and authentic to themselves sort of people. And those people do not fit in the everybody is equal collectivist view of the world. So I think there's just a huge amount of energy put into discouraging all that pursuit.
Very interesting. I want to touch on another thing, and then Gary, I'll pass it to you. I'll stop hogging the mic.
Sure.
I'm curious, MADEX, your thoughts currently on basically just like the large language models, AI, and their impact on art. Because personally, I kind of go back and forth on it in the sense that when you're talking about like the commoditization and the stupid like NFT bullshit that we see on Bitcoin, is like they just pump out these AI images over and over again, which feels very much so demoralizing. It's like depreciating the importance or value of it. But on the flip side of it as well, too, if I look at a different form of art, maybe something like film, where film has been just completely controlled because of basically the capital and the resources in certain areas. Well, if the cost of making a movie basically goes to the margins, it drops to zero, then all that's left is story. That's the only designation, the only difference between. So I can see a very positive impact in one side and a very negative one on the other. And I'm curious how it maybe fits into your framework or how you think about
it. Yeah, well, the AI stuff, the main thing is that it will, because it makes so much of the work that much easier, it will make the storytelling and the ideas that much more valuable and important. I think a comparable example is if all the energy was 1,000 times more affordable, then we could spend 1,000 times more effort focusing on building greater and better things. And so with all the AI tools, I think there's a great effect where it makes things easier, and because of that, it makes making good things that much more difficult. And it will make the rewards for authentic and original content that much higher. Because if everybody has sort of the same base level skill ability, then as you said, it entirely comes down to the ideas being communicated, the story being communicated, and the actual substance. So I think it will raise a lot of the creative work to a much higher level in film and in art, and just originality, original thinking unplugged thinking will become uh, that much more valuable. So
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Gary, your thoughts?
No, I think that makes sense because Nathan and I were talking about it before we got John. We were just speculating, and each of us has a bit of a creative background. Nathan in music and myself in acting and filmmaking a bit. But I can't draw for shit. I can't do clay or anything like that. But the idea that, I can now just speak words into a prompt and the vision in my head through AI can come out on the screen. I'm only limited by my imagination. And certainly that means there's going to be a lot more garbage out there because now it's completely democratized. Anybody can make it. But people before, who may not have had the skills or ability or capital to be able to produce this interesting original thing now can do it. So I think you might have to sort through more, but you might find more gems. Is that fair to say?
yeah, I think that it'll just make it'll make anything that somebody has put considerable effort in that much more important. Because it's like, okay, I have this message that I want to communicate to the world. I can AI generate some art around it. I can AI generate a movie around it. I can AI generate a song around it, and I can put it out there. Versus another person with a different message communicating that and spending the time and energy to do a full blown production on either in film or in art or in music or in all three, and taking that time. It's just, it will be that much more recognizable, like the effort put into it, because when you're watching it, you'll be able to tell that, like, okay, this isn't AI. And it's not about the visuals and kind of what it'll all look like, because that will become extremely good. But what will happen is it will be, as I said earlier, in the actual content, in the actual story. Like the attention to detail will be reflected out of the work. Whereas in the AI, inevitably will just cut corners wherever possible. And the person creating it, to the degree that they care about that project, is the degree that they would allow those shortcuts or corner cuts to exist. So projects that I'm working on, there's a lot of components about it that could probably be done with AI. But even if I'm using an AI tool to help with something, I'm paying extreme attention to the details, and I'm manually refining. I'm manually refining it, and I'm putting energy into it proportionate to how much I care about that release.
Oh, that's a really interesting way to think about it, because I just released a project a couple weeks ago, a sketch where it got to the point where yes, I would have liked certain things changed or slightly better, tweaked here and there. But in terms of the time and money invested to make those smaller and smaller changes, there had to be a point where I eventually said, okay, this just isn't worth it for me anymore. I got to cut my losses and move on. But it's a really interesting way to think about it. Like, how much are you willing to put in to make sure that you get every detail correct, and that reflected in your passion for the piece and that piece's meaning?
Yeah, there's a great there's a great saying that I keep in mind often, and I'll be talking about it at my keynote in Prague, which is that done is better than perfect. And it is true that wealth is in those extreme details. And I think that what has made a difference in the MADEX project is extreme attention to detail. But there's also a point where that refining can become a form of procrastination. And what as a creator, your job is to take the visions that you wish to push into the world, and then have them burst through reality and aligned with reality. And think projects have to flow, and you can always kind of do better on the next one.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's really good to get stuff out. And I think it's a barrier for a lot of people who are making and creating, is that pursuit of perfection. And I think what is important is the pursuit of perfection, not the achievement of perfection. Because even if you work something to the point where you think it is perfect, because our brains are ever evolving and developing, if you lock it in as perfect and you wait 1 week, the influence of your life over that week is going to have changed your perspective on that piece, and it'll just become a never-ending loop.
Are you still delaying taking self-custody of your Bitcoin? Do you feel secure in your current Bitcoin setup? If something were to happen to you, would your stack make it to your loved ones? At Bitcoin Mentor, we've helped thousands of people level up their Bitcoin security and fast-track their understanding. If you find that you simply don't have the time to go through all the books, the tutorials, the guides, you can book a free one-on-one strategy session with myself, Gary, or any of the other great mentors by visiting bitcoinmentor.io. Scan the QR code or simply click the link in the description down below to find out how Ben and the entire expert team at Bitcoin Mentor can help you accelerate your Bitcoin journey. Use promo code BTC Sessions for 10% off.
Yeah, that's fair. How do you view your pursuit of your art within the Bitcoin space? Because I think it's wonderful. It's so easy to kind of categorize, well, these people deal with money, these people deal with art, and rarely the two shall meet. And that's not necessarily the way we need to think about it. So I think what you're doing is fantastic. What do you view as, is it fair to say, a goal there, or what you're trying to accomplish, or how do you see yourself in that space?
Well, I'm primarily driven by my own desire for very good product, content, art, everything else around me. And it is my goal that the success of MADEX is a market signal to other creators to find meaning in this mission and bring their talents to this space. Because for me to be able to appreciate my own work, I have to have forgotten about making it, which takes a really long time.
Yep. Been
and
there.
I want stuff to support my own life, and that I'm an art buyer and a product buyer, the same as the clients who acquire from MADEX. So I'm hoping that MADEX is just a signal that says, hey, there's a market in Bitcoin, and Bitcoiners are willing to pay for a high level of quality. Because if you really care about something that you're doing, producing it at a high level of quality, it is the most important thing to you. And it can be very discouraging in fiat markets where the production of something to that high level is not respected or required, because we have been so dumbed down as a population that the average person doesn't understand the difference between a solid oak table and something that is fresh from IKEA. And that's very frustrating for anyone who is creative. And so I hope to show that Bitcoin is a place where that solid oak table that can be passed down many generations really is appreciated, and that you can find a market to sell your wares in. And then the bonus on that, of course, is signal and reaching out of Bitcoin and showing the time and effort and care put into it in a different way than I think the normie's primary contact with Bitcoin is a get super rich super quick sort of experience, and that's fine. But I would like some people's first contact with Bitcoin to be through MADEX, and to see, hey, there's this company that's making really incredible product, really incredible art, and it's all tied to this money revolution thing that I'm beginning to learn about. So a major change that's happening for me is I have this solo exhibition. I have this solo exhibition in Prague, and it is the last sort of Bitcoin conference event that I'm doing, that I'm showing my work at. As traveling around from one to the other requires a lot of time and a lot of capital. And my goal is that after BTC Prague, to focus very heavily on targeting markets outside of Bitcoin and reaching people who are not yet Bitcoiners and sort of Trojan horsing them into Bitcoin via the MADEX art. So hitting them in a niche that they care about, and then also having that piece infused with the signal from Bitcoin and broadcasting Bitcoin's message sort of in that way. So my goals are to do what I can to help Bitcoin succeed, and to signal to other brilliant creators to be inspired by the work I'm doing and come and bring their own abilities to the space.
No, it's very beautiful. I think it's an admirable position to take, and an admirable message as well too. We kind of touched on it a little bit there as well too. We're talking almost more from like the art producer side of bringing your art to the Bitcoiners, and then using that to also send your, bring your message to the no coiners. But I've heard you speak also about the importance, and touches on that concept of signal, of people spending their sats as well too. So maybe from the people that want to support, not from the producer standpoint, maybe there's additional value in being the buyers here.
Yeah, I've said that if you transact with somebody using Bitcoin, it's making a sort of venture capital or angel investment in that person's business. It becomes more than just buying the product from the person. You're really making an investment, because if that person that you transact with treats that Bitcoin correctly and respects that Bitcoin, it'll inevitably grow into that person or company's primary asset. And so by spending your Bitcoin, you're seeding all of the good that you want to see in the world, which is how money is supposed to work in the first place. But obviously, due to the parasites, looters, and leechers, we have fallen far from that. So Bitcoin is a way to sort of return to that, where when you transact with somebody, it's also a vote for them to survive. And anybody who is, like, all this talk about not spending Bitcoin is really daft, because if you're not spending Bitcoin, then what are you spending? And the answer is you are spending fiat. So it means you're short on Bitcoin, which means you're LARPing. Oh yeah, never sell my Bitcoin, but I'm I'm going to spend all this fiat money. It's really the same thing. There's no difference between being all in on Bitcoin and selling Bitcoin to participate and transact, or being 50% in on Bitcoin and using the other 50% to transact. It is still, every fiat dollar you spend is still opportunity cost on Bitcoin. So it's really a totally ridiculous thing to say, never spend your Bitcoin, because no matter what you're doing, if you know Bitcoin exists and you know you have the ability to buy Bitcoins, every transaction you make is short Bitcoin, except for buying and acquiring it. So it's a ridiculous take. And what's really important is building a network that is outside of centralized control. And how we do that is really simple. It's by paying your plumber, by paying your farmer, by paying all the people that you interact with that are a necessity to survival in life with Bitcoins, to ensure that their business exists in the future if they hold those Bitcoins correctly, and to have people to transact with when this inevitably going to happen, centralized bank currency, CD, whatever, comes in. And all that stuff starts to be restricted. So, like, that's going to happen no matter what. Already in Canada, it's extremely difficult to pay cash almost anywhere. They make it inconvenient to use cash. And we're going to see that across the whole world, because that is how that is their next fantasy about being able to control and manipulate us. It's the next step up from not only creating the money, but then also controlling how it is used. And the only way to opt out of that is to build a network locally with other people that you can transact with using Bitcoin. And the only way to do that is to start doing it, start spending the sats.
How do you see Bitcoin being received in the art space? Because I can tell you that amongst my, actor artist friends here in, the New York City area, almost all of them, if they know of it at all, or just perceive it as, oh, that's something that those, rich bro types have, and I'm not involved in Bitcoin, or that's a Republican Trump thing, and that's not for me.
Well, they're probably not successful in their craft, because the only way to transact at a high level without an insane amount of interference and inefficiency is to be paid with Bitcoin. If you're selling art over a certain price point, if you're getting paid for whatever other gigs over a certain price point internationally, it's just the best way to transact. So, like, I primarily found myself in Bitcoin as a result of doing international sales, and the fiat and legacy banking system being so ridiculous to participate in. And also, I realize there's infrastructure that is already well in place if you're running through agencies or big corporations, or if you're already within the fiat rails. But yeah, anyone who's they're just not using it, and they haven't seen that it could make their lives a lot easier. And I think that this whole like tech bro thing all came from sort of the crypto and the scam stuff. I mean, like, the most negative thing, like, there's certain people out there, I won't say who think that, oh yeah, well, like, pushing all the crypto stuff is actually really helpful for Bitcoin, because it like helps people get wrecked faster, and then they find Bitcoin. It's just so completely insane. Like, the crypto the blockchain crap, all that stuff has just hurt the adoption of Bitcoin so bad, because all the people who make that money, I shouldn't say make it, who scam that money so quickly and so much so fast, are so insufferable that gives Bitcoin a bad name. And then also all the bag holders that get absolutely fucking wrecked, that gives Bitcoin a bad name. And then at anytime there's an event like Mt. Gox or Quadriga or FTX or whatever the next one is, all the normies think it's Bitcoin that fucked up. They don't understand that there's private companies and there's Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin has never fucked up. So it's really all in the way, and all the mean maxis and all this fucking crap. Like, it's kind of like I had a meme out recently, which was, I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling Bitcoin maxis. So I'm looking forward to all that stuff going away, and the public, like the masses, wisening up to know that when somebody says blockchain, that it's a trigger for a scam, and to know when someone is strictly talking about Bitcoin, that they have your sort of interests at heart. And I hope that artists will. So my journey, I hope, will show how Bitcoin can be used as a tool in the art space, and also be used to connect with a market in the art space. And I would recommend any creator to just use it instead of believing whatever the New York Times publishes about it, because we all know who they work for.
You kind of touched on it in passing there too, and I'm curious if there's any other insights you have in there. So the idea, the thought that I had was that essentially fiat's influence is absolutely pervasive. It's everywhere. You could maybe say that like someone born into a Bitcoin world is kind of just arriving, or maybe arguably even not yet, like someone who's untouched by the corruption of fiat. I'm curious, in the Bitcoin space, if there's remnants of the fiat system that you still see kicking around, or that's kind of still pervasive in some of the mindset.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of over the years, it's become a lot easier, I guess, or for people to, not easier, but just a lot of people are calling themselves Bitcoiners, but they're lining up to vote.
Yeah.
They call themselves Bitcoiners, but they ask, they won't transact in Bitcoin because they're worried about creating a taxable event. That just haven't got it yet. I think a great example of this is how, in making cocktails, one of the required ingredients is simple syrup. Okay, so you can go to the store and you can buy simple syrup, and you can pay whatever the amount is for a bottle of simple syrup, and then use that for your cocktails. It'll probably have tartazine and fucking a whole bunch of other shit that you can't pronounce in the simple syrup, and it'll cost like a huge amount of money. Simple syrup is sugar and water. So you can have water and put sugar in it, and then you have simple syrup, and you don't have to pay the $40 and get all that other chemical crap and corn syrup and other bullshit in it. You can just fucking make the simple syrup yourself. And if you want a flavored simple syrup, you just drop a tea bag in there for whatever the flavor is you want, or whatever other ingredient. Like it is not complicated. And there's a million examples of this in cooking, I find, especially, where something is packaged and sold that is for an insane price that can be very easily just made at home. So the entire fiat world is that packaged simple syrup. And what I hope people realize very quickly is, hey, you don't have to pay money to get this product with all this other horrible crap in it. You can just do it yourself. It's and that is like what needs to happen ASAP. It's like the mentality has to. People really are plugged into this matrix system, and we are so heavily propagandized from when we begin school. In Canada, it's fucking totally out of control. In the States, I'm sure it's no better. In Europe, it's no better. We're so heavily trained into obedience, and every factor in our environment encourages estrogen, and this is very difficult to overcome. I think that the only generation that will actually be totally free of this is either the kids that are being born now with Bitcoiners as parents, like true, full, free, radical Bitcoiners, and maybe even then not. It might even take another generation to disconnect sort of all the puppet hooks that we kind of all have in us. And that's very frustrating, but I don't really know what the solution is other than just finding your own path to be like, hey, like, okay, I'm at a restaurant, and this is an example from Mexico, but so like keep that in mind. But I was down there with some friends, and my friend wants to light a cigarette at the restaurant. And in Mexico, you can smoke at pretty much every restaurant. And there's a big sign that says no smoking. And he's like, oh, fuck, like, I can't smoke this cigarette. I'm like, this is Mexico, brother. Just light the cigarette. Like, that's a sign. Like, that's a piece of plastic. Don't let it fucking control your decisions. So sure enough, like, lights the cigarette, and then, no issues.
Yep.
It's just a fucking plastic sign. And it really, if somebody doesn't want you smoking, they're going to come over and they'll ask you like, hey, can you please put that out? We would appreciate like maintaining a no smoking environment here. But like, don't let a plastic sign dictate your life. The sign says no parking. Just because it says no parking doesn't mean you can't park there. And like, there's a risk on that, obviously, which is like, okay, like you might get towed, or you might get a ticket or whatever. But the point is like, there's tons of just little things like this where we really are in this kind of obedience thing, and like we might not have to be.
Yeah, MADEX, I was going to ask, it's not the plastic sign that's stopping me. It's the men with the guns backing it up. Like,
yeah.
I'd love to transact in Bitcoin a lot more, but, like you said, it's a taxable event. And I'd love to say, well, fuck the government. Great, sure. Wait till the IRS comes and visits my house, and then I have problems. Are you going to help me with that? Because that would be great.
He'll do a beautiful portrait of you getting arrested.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can be a martyr. Yeah,
enough of my people are martyrs. I don't need to perpetuate it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, this sort of line is difficult to talk about on shows and things like that. And also, full disclaimer, I never think about it ever. But hypothetically, if I was to think about it, the whole point of this Bitcoin thing is that they can't enforce any of their bullshit on it. So you have to agree to comply, right? In the fiat world, if you don't comply, they freeze your accounts, They stop your ability to transact. They come and they seize your assets, and they can really mess your life up. But in the Bitcoin world, like how right? And that's the thing that it is the radical difference, right? It changes the, like, if I have assets in my possession and somebody wants to come and take them from me, the men with the guns, they can come and they can stick the guns and be like, okay, here are your choices. You give us the stuff and we won't kill you, or we'll just kill you and take the stuff anyways.
Or maybe put you in a cage.
Yeah. Whereas with Bitcoin, they can't just take it anyways. They can't just kill you and take the Bitcoins. Like, there has to be cooperation, some degree of cooperation.
Sure, but they can take the fiat stuff I own. Like, my car is not a Bitcoin car. It's a fiat car.
Spent too much on your car.
Is not a Bitcoin house. It's a fiat house. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you in principle. I would love to do it. I just, maybe you're braver than I am. I want to make sure.
No, I mean, like, everything I'm talking about is just theory. I'm fully compliant. But the point I was making with, like, the no smoking sign and, like, the stuff like that is just there's a lot of reading between the lines that has to happen in Bitcoin. And the market and the individual moves way faster than the government, the state, the collective can move. So there's a lot of room to figure out the solutions to these problems. And, in theory only, of course. But
of course. What's fascinating that I think you touched on there is that I think I don't even necessarily always give this the amount of credit or almost like respect that it has, is that in thinking about, like, the power and implications of Bitcoin, I think you're right that I don't think I even necessarily appreciate just how unbelievably powerful it is that they cannot take away your choice. Now, they can try and persuade you, and they can try and do some by physical or aggressive means, but there's no way that they can actually ever remove your choice. You always still have that to the bitter end. And that's incredibly powerful once fully understood. And of course, and then it changes all the incentive structures and stuff as well, too.
Let me break this down for my fellow Bitcoiners. In just 8 weeks, I've seen a serious shift. More strength, more energy, and fast muscle gains. The reason? FitScript. They ran 124 biomarkers, blood, hormones, inflammation, and built a fully custom plan: nutrition, training, supplements. No guesswork, no templates. This is functional medicine meets precision fitness for high-performing men who want sovereignty over their health. If you care about optimization the way you care about your money, test, don't guess. Don't trust, verify. Hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to check out FitScript and see what's possible.
I want to kind of pivot for a second because we touched on the wonderful Socialist Republic of Canada, and I myself am also in Alberta, and I'm absolutely loving your hat as well, too. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on the future of Alberta. And I know we've had a couple Rand references throughout here. Maybe we have a Gulch situation.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate dream is I would encourage all Albertans to visit Switzerland and see what they've done there in terms of just, like, the sheer infrastructure that is built in the mountains and how defensible and able to mechanize the entire country is. It was very inspiring to me for my dreams of Alberta because of the environment that we have here. But overall, I mean, I'm bullish in dreaming about it. I'm bearish in the reality of an independent Alberta. The primary reason being that for years and years and years and years here, but I would say since Trudeau Senior first nearly destroyed the fucking province in the 80s, there has been massive brain drain from Alberta. So very capable people leave. And I very roughly say, and I hope people can see the joke in it because I'm still here, but I really say that like anyone who has any intelligence at all or the ability to produce any amount of value leaves and gets the fuck out of here. Even for my own life, I have no regrets, but if I was to restart, the day I turned 18, I would have been across the border into the United States. Participating in a first world economy. That just does not exist in Canada, and it especially does not exist after 10 fucking years of stagnation and just wealth destruction. So the way I see it going for Alberta is everything is going to be done right by the letter of the law. Everything is going to be packaged up and put together. It'll all be peacefully, and it will there's going to be this vote, and the people will vote to leave. There's going to be a huge effort to stop that. I think that joining the US is just a totally ridiculous psyop because it's trading one abusive partner for another. We go from 45% taxes to 35% taxes. It's not really a difference. And I think in the US, they call them transfer payments. They do sort of the same communist stuff that Canada does. But yeah, I see everything being done right, and there being a vote to leave, and it all being set up to separate. And very obviously, the federal government is just going to say no. And even if it's fully within our right, they will sue us. They will do whatever it takes. So something I've been saying to people is that kind of touches on that no smoking sign comment. Everything on this earth is no different than Pablo Escobar's business and story. As in, there are no rules at a certain level. It all just becomes the same game. If people think that Canada is going to just walk away and be like, oh yeah, you guys are right, from trillions and trillions of dollars in capital.
Absolutely not. No.
You're out of your fucking mind. So, and if you think that the government of Canada is not going to assassinate Albertans over trillions and trillions of dollars of capital, like the stakes are so extremely high that there's just no rules. So that's that I don't think that can be overcome. So what Alberta needs for success is a Napoleon to emerge here, a Caesar type character to emerge here. It needs an extremely strong, ruthless leader, and we need time to build infrastructures, which supposedly from the provincial government is the plan. We need time to build the infrastructure to be able to push back when that day comes where the federal government says, no, you're not going to be able to do this.
So ironically, you say you need the strong man that Hayek talks about in Road to Serfdom.
Yeah, we need we need the most intelligent and most capable fucking people possible to take control of the situation. And I think that, as I said earlier, a lot of those people leave Alberta, and there's also a really great Anon poem, which is titled "The Men Who Just Wanted to Be Left Alone," and that applies very much here. Where, and I think to all of the United States, even all the United States, all the Canada, a lot of I don't know, I can't really speak to Europe, but definitely the US and Canada, which is the level of theft that the state has been able to get away with really shows how dedicated people are to just enjoying their life and living in peace. Because it has far long past acceptable levels. And in that Man Who Wants to Be Left Alone poem, and the statement is that to push back against the men with the guns means you're looking at violence, and a long period of violence. And very obviously, everybody wants to avoid that at all costs, which is why we've continued to allow so much theft. But now we're starting to get to the point where life is not sustainable at all. So like when you're looking at 2% taxes, it's like, okay, fine. 5%, okay, fine. 10%, all right. 20%, okay. Now in Canada, we're well above 50%. A lot of people say the number's around 70 to 80% tax. And the optimal tax rate is 0. And if a 100% tax on somebody working is slavery, then what is a 10% tax? What is a 50% tax? So 10% a slave, 50% a slave, 70% a slave. So I think we're really quickly approaching the point where the theft is too great, and the hubris from the thieving class is not passable anymore. And so I think we will see a lot of changes over the next years around that. And the only peaceful way to respond to this theft, and the only way to really be able to do anything about it, is to move all your assets and transactions into the money system that they can't control, which is Bitcoin. It's the only peaceful response. Anything outside of that, you're clashing with the entire state system operates on coercion, and fiat only functions because there's somebody with a gun to our heads saying you have to fucking use this or we'll kill you.
Sure.
And the only way to push back against that is so yeah. So for Alberta's future, I'm hopeful, and the dream I would see is that Alberta, wherever the lines get drawn, probably the majority of British Columbia and the majority of Saskatchewan would want to come with us. So it might end up being kind of bigger than it should be, but hopefully it's kind of broken up into states. And, like I said, it needs someone who has this vision of a great system. I think the Rhodesian model would be really good here. But when it comes down to it, the feds are going to say no, and then it'll come down to AR-15s and pickup trucks. And I just don't think that the Canadian people have the stones for that. So,
Gary?
It all comes down to violence, man. All the nice pleasantries we say and the philosophical debates we have back and forth, it still just comes down to violence, guns at the end of the day, as sad as a proposition as that is. So, you'll get an argument from me. I think people around the world are willing to tolerate a whole lot. You talk about 50, 60 in Europe. They tolerate a ton of stuff being taxed from them, a ton of red tape, a ton of control over their lives. So people are unfortunately often willing to be pushed a lot farther than one might think in order to avoid violence.
I'm much more optimistic than both of you, but that could be just my naivety in the subject as well too. But essentially, I do agree with that it's politics is downstream from culture. Culture is downstream from art, which is why I think it's so important the work that you're doing in similar other people as well too. But to that same point, we need almost like a story, a character. There has to be a character for this idea of an independent Alberta to really grab the imagination of people. They need a totem to lock on to that they can try and identify with or find inspirational or at least comforting to really get the ball sort of rolling. And my hope would be, and it goes back to sort of even the ideals of Bitcoin, my hope is that if we were able to pull it off, it would kind of be twofold. One, it would be, we've got enough here that we could potentially trade with the US that we might be able to do something. So we don't have to necessarily rely on our guns to move quickly, but rely on their guns, whether it be access to resources or direct access to Alaska without having to go through the mountains might be of high value. If we have Northwest Territories involved as well too, access to the Arctic could be enough to be trade to get that kind of going. And then the other one, and we've seen it kind of in the Bitcoin space occasionally as well too, is that my hope is that I think the only way it happens in the short to medium term is if we move incredibly fast. That if we're able to basically outmaneuver the just gargantuan, slow, sloth, disgusting Canadian government. Because even on Bitcoin, they always feel like they're behind the curve on where it's going and what we're doing. So if we can move fast and we can trade with the big guns in order to have the enforcement of recognizing whatever decision is made, then I think there's a chance. But I agree that it's not set in stone. And my optimism probably comes from it's out of desire. I'd like to leave Canada without leaving my home.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Like, it really breaks my heart, the situation. And it definitely has the best chance ever. Like, I saw the conversation over the years because I've been on this independent vision for a very long time. And for a long time, it was, you're crazy. That'll never happen. And then it changed to that would be cool, but it'll never happen, to that would be cool, maybe it could happen, to this is what we need to do, let's find a way for it to happen. And I think that's kind of the stage that we're at now with a lot of people is how do we do this, which is really great. And there's a lot of with the US thing, like, it would be great for us to make a deal with the US and then the US be willing to stand up to Canada with force in order to protect us. And it would be, I mean, the ideal outcome is that Alberta becomes a sort of Monaco or an Andorra or Luxembourg or Liechtenstein, like one of these sort of places that and what I would, if I had any say in the way it was set up, it would be all the classics, which are no taxes, no income taxes, no as close to zero as possible. Maybe in the beginning there are some required for bootstrapping things, but honestly I think it can be pretty much accomplished through donation. So that would be the best outcome, or we're able to build up enough force internally to be able to defend ourselves as well. But the key asset is the Canadian forces and the Alberta forces. It doesn't matter what exists; it'll be whoever the U.S. decides to back. My question is with the U.S. is would they be willing to allow us to be free, I guess, because it would be really good for the United States to consider the oil sands in Alberta their own asset. So
you want me to put in a good word for you?
Please do, Gary.
Put in a good word.
Sure. No problem. Yeah.
I'll say another thing to think about too that might be, again, if it comes down to perfect timing, is that if the Canadian moose shekel, the snow peso, it starts to really crash or go to zero, and we have some major economic hardships in Canada, which I think will, if Bitcoiners are basically congregating, if Canadian Bitcoiners congregate in Alberta, and so the Bitcoin wealth is necessarily here, plus we have the resources, and if Ontario and Quebec particularly start really hurting economically, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we could essentially just buy our way out. Yeah, we'll take on this portion of the debt. Now we'll take on this portion of the debt, but we're done.
Yeah, and I mean, as Dave Bradley has said a number of times, like with the taxation situation, pretty much the entire independent Alberta could be funded just with oil royalties and be extremely wealthy. So it's not far off for, if it was to be set up correctly, that the city of Calgary would become sort of like a Dubai. And offer, very similar opportunities. And I think that it will be an extremely attractive place, not just for Canadians to get to, but for the whole world to get to. I mean, it's kind of this like low hanging fruit that's out there right now, which is that whichever country that doesn't suck in terms of environment decides to have no taxes, let people educate their children however they want, allow people to conceal and carry firearms. Whichever place on earth puts those three things into action, first, the entire world, like the intelligence of the entire world is going to move there. So I've said on Twitter a few times, and I say to people who I know that are outside of Alberta that, calling all entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are the drivers of civilization, are the heart of civilization. And we need as many entrepreneurs and creative and strong thinkers in Alberta as we can possibly get. And so if my message is, if you're a loyalist redcoat, get the fuck out of Alberta. And if you're an entrepreneur, now's the time to come here and help us build an environment for entrepreneurs to thrive and succeed in.
Fuck yeah. And with that, MADEX, I know we have, you mentioned you have some non-Bitcoin galleries coming up. Is there any of those that you can share? You got BTC Prague. Where can people check out your work, buy your work, and follow everything that you're doing?
So I have a solo exhibition at BTC Prague, which is June 19th to 21st. I'm extremely excited about this. The organizers do an incredible job. It is the best conference event I've ever been to. And the production quality is just astronomically high. I was really blown away when I participated last year. And this year I've had the opportunity to take over a whole wall in the expo venue, and I will have 10 originals, about 50 prints, and 50 or so of the open dime totems. So it's a big display of work for me. Online, I'm at Spacebull on Twitter, and madex.art is my current website. And you can also find me through any of the Bull Bitcoin links. I do all of the creative and branding work for Bull, and also am a user, of course, in Canada. And so I recommend anyone in Europe, Mexico, Costa Rica, or Canada to use Bull. And you can find out why by looking into that. So I'll be in BTC Prague. And then as for other events outside of Bitcoin, I have the Bitcoin Rodeo as well immediately after in Alberta. And then nothing else. I'm working entirely on production after the Bitcoin Rodeo, so that I can supply some of these Fiat galleries. I've gotten these request lists for like 25 paintings and I just don't have them. So I got to get all that stuff made. But yeah, I'll be out there continuing to build, focusing very heavily on film, try and send out film and writing to try and send out a lot of these messages that we talked about here today, and many others in a consumable and entertaining way.
If you enjoyed this episode with MADEX, please do like, share, and subscribe, and check out the previous episode with Knut Svanholm.